What's up, everybody? We are T-minus 5 days away from the Super Bowl in Los Angeles, so if you're looking to pregame with Snoop, Eminem, or Dr. Dre, you still have time to put those greatest hits playlists together since odds are you're not going. This is The Sweat. Welcome. I'm Adam Kaufman. We have got a big NBA trade to dissect ahead of a robust slate on the hardwood, a look at what's happening on the ice, a preview of the Waste Management Phoenix Open, and so much more. But first, we will begin with football, and we are joined now by DraftKings contributors Pierce Dietrich, Matt Meiselman, and Steve Buchanan. We'll talk a little lineup strategy for DK's Super Bowl Millionaire Showdown contest in just a moment. Before we do that, listen to this. There will be $6 million in total prizes, with $1 million going to first place, just $15 to enter. It's never too early to reserve your spot in that contest. Just make sure you fill out that lineup after the fact. Check it out in the DraftKings lobby right now while these guys help you out to set those lineups if you want to get in just a little bit ahead of the party. Pierce, we begin with you, my friend. Most important, Bengals-Rams against Super Bowl on Sunday. Who are you going to captain?
I'm going to take Joe Mixon. I said take him as your Super Bowl MVP before the Kansas City game at 100-1 odds. I'm going to stick with it. If he can fall into the end zone 2 to 3 times, and if this game ends up being a conservative, mild game, 2 to 3 touchdowns will likely lead to an MVP performance. And if it's also a very conservative game, that's also going to work in DFS as well. I'm also really bullish on the Bengals defense, and we know that in showdown slates, the DST and the running back tend to go well together. If the defense can get the turnovers, play well overall, then the Bengals likely will be conservative on offense, so you'll get more volume from Mixon. So I like the correlation there, and I'm just going to keep sticking with my pick.
Oh, Matt, I like the play, but I hope this game is so far from conservative. Who are you going to captain?
Yeah, I like Mixon too. Maybe I'll save that answer for a different question, but I do like that call a lot. To me, if you were trying to build a lineup that's less contrarian, Mixon I think makes for a better contrarian play, but among the top players who I think are the popular options, Cooper Kupp, Jamar Chase, the 2 quarterbacks, Cooper Kupp is my favorite amongst those guys. I just think in general, people overvalue quarterbacks as captains, especially ones who don't run very much, because even if a quarterback has a huge game, if he's not a runner, it's likely that one of his pass catchers scores more points than him. And Cooper Kupp is such a high volume receiver for the Rams that if Stafford's great, Kupp is likely even better. And I just think that not enough people are going to play Kupp at captain relative to Chase and to the quarterback. So if the choice is between just the highest priced guys, I think it's Kupp. But yeah, I do like Joe Mixon also.
When the Rams are involved, it always feels like you're taking your financial future into your hands by not rostering Cooper Kupp. Do you captain him, Bukes? Are you captaining somebody else? Who is it?
Yeah, look, I mean, no one's going to say don't captain Cooper Kupp. I mean, that's a person who's not going to cash in anything. But with that being said, I have no issue with taking Joe Burrow in the captain spot. You know, Matt just said that people overvalue the quarterback. What's up? I'm one of those people. I have no problem doing that, okay? I mean, look at it. This is somebody who's thrown at least 2 touchdowns in 4 of his last 5 games. 2 of those games, he had over 4. He has been electric when he's taken the field, and he has a plethora, great word, of receivers that he can throw to. I mean, he has so many guys that he can go to. The problem with getting some of these receivers is you have to nail that receiver. If it's T. Higgins who has a big game, if it's Tyler Boyd who has a big game, I don't mind collecting all of that. Just going with Joe Burrow, stacking him with 2 or 3 receivers, and go at the contest that way.
If you want more big words from Bukes, he's a writer too. DK Playbook. You can check out his work, including maybe a preview of this game. Matt, who's a great pivot at captain you expect to be lower owned?
Yeah, so the reason I like Mixon is almost entirely for this. It's not that I expect the Bengals to win. I probably am picking the Rams to win. But if they do win, if the Bengals overperform, I don't think that's the game that winds up where Joe Burrow is the winning captain. I think Burrow is more likely to have a big game if the Rams get up early and he needs to throw a lot. Maybe the Bengals come back and win that way. But if the Bengals are winning early in this game, to Pierce's point, I think they do get more conservative, and they tend to be more of a run-based offense than people realize in general. They've been in some shootouts over the last couple months of the season, but for the most part during the year, it was kind of the Joe Mixon show most weeks. And I don't know that enough has happened where we should just totally change our minds about what the Bengals are. They obviously have a lot of skill at wide receiver, but I think if you get a game where the Bengals are leading, Mixon could have a huge day. And ultimately, it comes down to he'll be less popular than just about anyone in his price range, because I think most people expect the Rams to win, or if they expect the Bengals to win, they're going to go with Steve's guys with Burrow and the pass catchers. So I just don't think Mixon will be nearly as popular as anyone else at the high end.
Bukes, right back to you. Dazzle us.
So look, obviously, the Bengals need to try to stop Cooper Kupp. Good luck. No one's been able to do that. But I think it's been shown, and we saw it last week, that Cooper Kupp isn't the only guy that can have a big game when it comes to the Rams receivers. Odell Beckham Jr. had 9 catches for 113 yards last week, 23.3 DraftKings fantasy points. It is very evident that Matt Stafford is comfortable going to Odell Beckham, who has 19 targets in the 2 playoff games that the Rams have played. So I feel like if you want lower ownership and somebody who has some really high upside here as well, Beckham is probably going to be one of the guys in the lower pecking order, because if you're taking a receiver, you're going to Kupp, you're going to Chase. Beckham is not going to be one of those top choices. So I think Beckham has the upside as some of these other guys do, but he's going to come in at much lower ownership, especially in the captain spot.
Pierce, who stands out to you?
So I'm already on Mixon, the Bengals DST. I don't really have to get more contrarian, but if I was going to pivot even further, then I would look at Cam Akers. It seems crazy, but if you're going to roster some of these popular receivers and quarterbacks, you have to find a way to be different. And Akers is going to have some pretty low ownership because he hasn't played very well. He's got the questionable tag heading into this game, but he will have 2 weeks to mend. We know the Rams have a good offensive line unit. The Bengals are above average against stopping the run. They're not great against stopping the run. They tend to be more porous against receiving running back, but the Rams don't really have a receiving running back. So it can work for Akers. It's a risky strategy, but again, if you're going to roster Kupp and Chase and Burrow and you want to try to differentiate from the rest of the field, you have to get really weird with those players, and it'll probably require rostering Akers.
Well, on top of that, if you want to pay up for guys like that, be it a captain or elsewhere, you're going to have to fade some guys here, obviously. So, whether it's Matt Stafford, whether it's T. Higgins, some of the more expensive guys, Bukes, who are you fading?
Cam Akers. I want nothing to do with Cam Akers. Sorry, Pierce, you had a lovely answer, but I think it stunk. Here's the thing with Cam Akers, right? Since he's come back, he's been more of a detriment to this game plan. He has not been productive since he's taken the field. It's incredible that he's back and he's taking the field, but I don't think anybody can say with a straight face that he's helped this team offensively. They've added Sony Michel back into the mix. I know that Akers left for a little bit in that last game, so that's why Sony Michel was in the mix. But I think it's fair to say that Sony Michel has been the better back thus far. And believe me, the bar is not high because Cam Akers is averaging under 3 yards per carry since he's returned. Then there's a little rumblings. Maybe Darrell Henderson's coming back into the mix as well. I want nothing to do with a $9,600 running back that could be in a committee and quite frankly has not been overly productive. So I want nothing to do with Cam Akers when it comes to my Showdown lineups.
Pierce, I feel like I need your answer now.
Steve is right. Akers is the pivot off the pivot. It is an extreme play. So I will stick with the Mixon and Bengals DST as my original contrarian option. But who I'm not going to play is Matt Stafford. And I disagree with Matt in this sense that I don't think you can play Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford together. And Kupp will be fine. We know he's going to get his points. The question is, will he be efficient? Will he be a good point per dollar play? Well, we know he's going to get the points. And I don't think he's going to be a great point per dollar play. He can get into the optimal lineup based on raw points alone. It really is more dependent on, do other big, expensive players also have efficient games? And are there value guys that come through that allow you to roster Cooper Kupp? My question or my concern is if you roster Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford, then you have to differentiate with a couple value guys, and you're drawing from such a small pool, and you're competing against people that are entering 150 fantasy lineups. I just don't see how you're going to be able to differentiate drawing from such a small pool of players with such a low probability of hitting. I don't think you can play them both. I'd rather take Kupp than Stafford.
I will never fade Matt Meiselman. Who are you fading?
That's too bad.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm probably looking to play Kupp without Stafford too. But the situation that I'm most curious about is just what the ownership ends up being on Cam Akers. Like, this has been a good segue into this because my initial assumption was Cam Akers is chalk, and because he's 6,400 and then 96 in the captain spot, that's just way cheaper than other starting players. So a lot of people will gravitate towards him. But with the injury concerns now, like, to me, it's possible. Like, one of these guys is right. Either Akers is going to be a contrarian play who's worth considering, or he's not going to be that contrarian because of his cost and a lot of people play him, and then I don't want him. So this has been a bit of a wishy-washy answer, but ultimately, like, I'm just going to stay away from the Akers analysis for now beyond that. And my fade is going to be a different running back, Samaj Pirein, who I think is going to be the guy people use when they want to fit Kupp and they want to fit Stafford and they want to fit Burrow and all of that. He's the cheapest relevant player in this game. So $2,400 for Pirein. Just like, if you're playing him, you're probably doing a lot of similar things to other people. So that's really why I want to stay away from Pirein.
You know, I might have expected Cam Akers to come up as a value play, even at $9,600, a value play from you, Pierce. Obviously, you went in a different direction there. Who do you like at value?
The Bengals DST is going to be my value play. It seems like an obvious play to me. You got a front four that's going to get pressure on Stafford. They can leave their DBs back into coverage, take advantage of the interceptions, and we've seen this before. I mean, we look back at that Kansas City game. Patrick Mahomes was scrambling for his life. He has a top 5 offensive line, and they couldn't protect him. Los Angeles is going to run the same issue. They've seen this type of defense before. The Tennessee Titans scored 16 DKFP against the Rams earlier this season. They don't have a good secondary. They have a good front four. They got pressure on Matt Stafford. Got 5 sacks, 2 interceptions, and a touchdown. San Francisco, again, during the regular season, team not with a great secondary, but with a good front four. They got a pass rush on Stafford in both games, sacked him multiple times, got multiple interceptions, scored a touchdown in one game. This is the same scheme. This is the same game plan. The Bengals defense is going to present a bunch of problems for the Rams offense. You
know, Matt, I'm compelled to mention kickers are people too.
Yeah, I'm a little worried that the kickers are the chalk value play, so I'm gonna continue to stay away from them. The guy I think that gets overlooked that's a little bit cheaper is Van Jefferson, who also carries a questionable tag into this game, but that's been true of the last 2 Rams games also, and he played. He hasn't done a ton, but Jefferson is kind of a boom or bust guy. Like, he's more of a deep threat than either Kupp or Beckham. And I just think that because Tyler Boyd is priced around here, the kickers are cheaper, the defenses are cheaper, Pirein's a lot cheaper. If there's a value play that kind of gets overlooked, I think Van Jefferson is that player. Tentatively, I want to play Sony Michel if everyone's playing Cam Akers, but if that becomes not the case and Akers is not popular, then the Michel thing isn't as interesting to me. So for that scenario, I'm going with Jefferson. I think among the starting receivers on both teams, he's probably the lowest owned of that group.
Bukes, you want to make a case for maybe a Bengals receiver, or you want to go elsewhere?
I think Kendall Blanton is somebody that will probably get more popular once Tyler Higbee, if he ends up being ruled out, as a value play, with 4,600 against a defense that has struggled to defend against his position to begin with. And once we saw Higbee go out of that game, Blanton caught all 5 of his targets for 57 yards, 10.7 DraftKings fantasy points. Didn't, rock anyone's world with that output there. But at that price range, I mean, look at the quote unquote value plays you have available. Do you feel comfortable playing any of these guys? Not really. Like, we keep saying Pirein's a value play. Good Lord. If that's what the bar is, I want nothing to do. That is an awful value play. He can't catch for anything. He's on third downs, and he can't even do his job when he's down on the field at third down. He fumbled like 2 balls when he was right to him. Quick checkdowns. Can't even catch that. Give me Blanton, who obviously shows that he can catch the ball, 4,600, but boy, the pool is very, very small.
Guys, thank you very much. We will hear plenty more from you during the week, obviously leading up to the big game. But for this show, you're all done. Congrats. Hoops on the way here on The Sweat.
Great.
All right, time to hit the hardwood here on The Sweat with DraftKings contributors Julian Edlow and Gary Thorne, plus, of course, RotoWire's Nick Whalen. Guys, it's not official yet, but we've got a big trade expected to go down with Portland's fire sale continuing. Now, here are all the details. According to Adrian Wojnarowski, ESPN, after he and Shams Charania have kind of gone back and forth on Twitter. So, Blazers getting Josh Hart, Thomas Satoransky, Nikhil Walker-Alexander, Gigi Luzada, and a 2022 protected first-round pick and 2 second-round picks. On the other side, for the Pelicans, C.J. McCollum, certainly the biggest name in the deal, at least he and Josh Hart, as well as Larry Nance and Tony Snell. It is a monster package. Both teams clearly will be shorthanded tonight when they are both in action, so that's going to create quite a bit of value on this 10-gamer. Jules, let's go to you first, though. What do you think of the move?
Yeah, it's an interesting move. We saw last week Portland already selling off 2 key pieces in Powell and Covington, and now the next step is getting rid of McCollum. So it leaves the big question, obviously, what's going to happen with Lillard. I know Portland wants to build around Lillard and try and use these pieces to get a free agent, make a trade with some of their assets for another guy this summer. But is that going to work? Is Lillard going to be on the move? And if so, where? So I think that's the last piece hanging. In terms of this trade in particular, Portland's tanking it. That's going to be it for them this season. We'll see where they wind up in the lottery. The other side is really interesting because New Orleans was a team that got off to one of the worst starts in the NBA. Didn't look like they would be anything this season. Now they're in the 10 seed. I don't think they're going to get up into the playoffs, but they're almost certainly now with the Blazers coming down, going to be in that play-in round. And they're going to have a lineup of Graham, CJ, Ingram, Valanciunas. Do we see Zion come back this season? Because this move is obviously to keep Zion long-term and give them a good starting 5, which they have. If they have Zion with that starting 5 in the play-in round and get a Lakers, Clippers, that's going to be a game. So I am interested to see what the Pelicans become this season.
Garion, anything to add there?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is a trade, as Jules said, to maybe keep Zion happy when he does come back. I would say this is also a trade where David Griffin is clearly trying to keep his job, and he is someone who maybe doesn't care about a future. I mean, it might turn into like a 2023 first-round pick leaving because I don't know if he'll be around to be the one to use that pick for the New Orleans Pelicans. So I think for me, the big question here is, one, how does this affect Brandon Ingram in a fantasy capacity? I mean, this is someone who we've seen the past couple of weeks almost take on this point forward role for the Pelicans. And while CJ McCollum is not like a natural point guard by any means, he is someone who has filled in that role and in that capacity when Damian Lillard has been sidelined the past couple seasons. So how much does he sort of ease the burden on someone like Brandon Ingram, where a lot of fantasy owners wouldn't want that burden eased? And then what's the next move for the Blazers? Because right now I think they have 17 guys on their roster, so clearly they have to make some moves. I mean, Nikhil Alexander-Walker, I know your mileage may vary with that particular player, but like Josh Hart, I would be surprised if they're not trying to think of a secondary move here to send Josh Hart to a contender, because Josh Hart's just too good to be on this Blazers team as currently constructed. So I'm curious to see what the next piece of the puzzle is for the Blazers here.
Nick, what were your big takeaways?
Yeah, well, I think Garion's right about Josh Hart. I think we could see something similar with Eric Bledsoe as well, who developed a phantom Achilles injury like the moment that this past weekend's trade broke with the Clippers. I mean, to be honest, I don't love this deal for either side, the McCollum trade. I think McCollum and Devontae Graham is arguably the worst defensive backcourt in the league. Brandon Ingram, not a fantastic defender on the wing. It does make me wonder if maybe they know something or they feel good about Zion coming back. If that's the case, that becomes really interesting. But, what kind of a runway is Zion going to need before he's back up to speed? He's also been one of the worst defenders in the league when healthy the last couple of years as well. So I don't really feel like this raises New Orleans' ceiling all that much. I mean, it virtually does lock them into the play-in tournament, mostly because the team that they traded with is the team directly behind them in the Western Conference standings. So Portland's basically bowing out. New Orleans should be locked into the 9 or the 10. That's all well and good, but I don't really know what the upside is here. I mean, you're paying CJ McCollum almost $70 million over the next couple of years. I don't really feel like anyone thinks this is a landscape shifting trade for the New Orleans Pelicans. And I don't know, maybe Zion has been a longtime fan of CJ McCollum and he's just dying to play with him. But I mean, if I'm Zion Williamson, I don't feel like this really changes the compass of where this team is headed, whether it's the rest of this year, next year, or even the year after. So kind of a bizarre deal, I think, for both sides. And if you're Portland, you've now given up 3 starters, and you got back a fairly heavily protected first-round pick, a bunch of guys that you're probably going to move on from, and maybe Justice Winslow, maybe Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Like those are kind of the 2 young players who you brought back. It's kind of a bleak situation if you're looking around and you're Damian Lillard.
All right, we are going to have to speed it up a little bit to get through all the stuff that we had planned on doing for NBA, obviously, before that trade broke. But chase or fade, guys, is what we're going to do here. The 4 guys who are the highest price on this slate. You got Joker, you got Luka, Joel Embiid, Greek Freak, all within $1,000 of each other. So chase or fade, chase one and fade one here, Gary, and let's start that way.
Yeah, so I'll chase Giannis. I just think that game has the potential, especially with LeBron back and AD back playing as well as they played in that last game. It just has the potential to be a close script. And, we know every Bucks game is an up-tempo script. So Giannis just has the potential here, I think, to really hit his ceiling. And we know his ceiling can be massive. I mean, this is someone who across his last 13 games is averaging 1.7 DraftKings points per minute. I would also say that I'm leaning more towards the Giannis-Luka end of this, just because I like Anthony Davis as much as I do in this particular spot. And I think he's the number 1 option at center, more so than Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic on a per-dollar basis tonight.
Nick, who are you chasing, who are you fading?
I'm chasing Giannis as well. I'm not fading Embiid. I simply refuse to do that at this point. But, I mean, Giannis went for 47 last time they played this Lakers team, and the Lakers should be able to keep this one, I think, competitive enough that we're seeing Giannis, play 32 to 35 minutes. I don't think this is a complete route for the Bucks, and it's so tough to fade any of these guys. I guess I would fade Doncic, gun to my head. He's playing Detroit. Maybe Dallas gets out to a big lead, and he's, is limited a little bit in the second half. But, I mean, you're really going to be hard-pressed to build a case for why you absolutely can't put one of these 4 guys in your lineup.
Jules, your turn. It's your turn, pal.
Let's make it 3 for 3, chasing Giannis. He's the cheapest of the 3, which is also nice. I think we should have a good pace in that Lakers game. He scored 66 last time he faced the Lakers, 66 DraftKings points. And I'm going to fade Jokic. He's the most expensive of the bunch, slower pace. Got a matchup against Mitchell Robinson. He only scored 54 DraftKings points in 26 minutes last time he faced the Knicks, which isn't nearly enough if you're paying 12-6.
I mentioned it before, guys. Other than someone like, say, Şengün for Chicago, all the value tonight, it seems now, is going to come from New Orleans and Portland. Are you going to look elsewhere, Nick, or are you going to one of those 2 teams?
No, I am absolutely going to one of those 2 teams. I mean, you can kind of take your pick now of a lot of the depth pieces. I mean, if you're looking at New Orleans, even someone like a Brandon Ingram, certainly not a value play, but taking on more responsibility, you would think, with Josh Hart unavailable. I think it'll be interesting to see if Jackson Hayes, who I believe is at 5,500 tonight, comes back into the starting lineup. They went with that bigger lineup with he and Valanciunas, with Hart missing some time recently. I think he's a really attractive option tonight. And if you're talking season-long fantasy too, a guy maybe you want to grab ahead of the deadline. So Hayes, someone like Jose Alvarado, Garrett Temple if he plays tonight, Herb Jones, value all over the place for New Orleans.
I mentioned Şengün for Chicago. I don't know why. Houston. Jules, you're up.
Not getting, whoa. We're in the same place.
Giving it away now.
Not getting fancy here with the value. You're going to these 2 teams, especially in cash games. Jose Alvarado, like Nick mentioned, especially with Alexander Walker being kind of a late include in that trade. So Alvarado on the Pelicans side, on the Portland side, already no Norm Powell and no Covington getting out of there. And now CJ, I'll look at Ben Mclemore to get some pretty big volume, get some shots up there for Portland against Orlando, which gives you a nice matchup.
Yeah, Justice Winslow, Dennis Smith Jr., these guys basically right at the minimum here, Garion.
Yeah, I think Mclemore is probably the safest name on Portland from a value perspective, just because he's probably going to play like 35 minutes tonight. I would say somewhere between like 12 to 15 field goal attempts, most of those coming from 3. So the upside is pretty high there. I will say this might open up an opportunity where some of the ownership potential is taken away from someone like Cam Thomas, who yesterday I figured would just be one of the most popular value plays on the slate, considering what he's done the past 2 games, where Brooklyn's been in sort of a 1-star offensive situation. It kind of seems like Harden's trending towards playing tonight, but with no Kyrie Irving, I don't think Thomas is going to lead the team in usage like he has the last 2 games with James Harden back in the mix, but he's averaged 1.22 DraftKings points per minute in that 2-game span, kind of being the second fiddle on that team. And they're still just down to 1 star tonight if it is James Harden. So I think Thomas is in a nice spot, and maybe some of that popularity is alleviated by all this value being opened up by this trade.
Sixers guys favored by just a point at home against the Suns, minus 115 on the money line as well. Chaser fade Philadelphia is a good bet, Jules.
I will. It's probably a stay away game for me, but I will chase it. If you made me bet it, I'd bet Philly because you have the Suns on the second night of that road back-to-back. They were up big in that game, and Chicago came back and made it a 3-point game and actually covered. Bad beat if you took Phoenix in that one. The way I would probably bet this one, the Sixers, good first quarter, good first half team at home, so I might look at Philly on the first quarter line, coming out strong with Embiid, and the Suns, didn't have much momentum at the end of that game. Maybe they get started slow second night of a road back-to-back, but this is a tough game.
What do you say, Garion?
Yeah, I'll echo Jules. I don't really have a strong lean in this game, although I will say it's just tempting to take the Suns as an underdog. It just doesn't happen all that much. This is actually only the 6th time this season they are an underdog in a game. 3-2 ATS their past 5 games as an underdog. So I don't know. The Suns have been really good on the road. Yes, they are on the second night of a back-to-back, but I do think they're one of the few teams in the NBA, not that you can stop Embiid, but they have a lot of size. I think they can use that to their advantage. Obviously, they have elite guard play too on both ends of the court. I'll take the Suns, but yeah, it's not something I'm really looking forward to betting.
Nick?
I'm with Julian. I think this is probably a stay away. I if I had to pick, I would probably go Philly. I think we've seen, Phoenix let Chicago back into that game multiple times, really. Last night, they got tripped up over the weekend by Atlanta. Still probably the best and most consistent team in the league, but they've also been playing Devin Booker and Chris Paul and Mikal Bridges monster minutes, really for almost the last month at this point. Kind of due for regression there, I think, at some point. I think this is a tough spot. Not only are they on the second half of a back-to-back, this is their 3rd game in 4 nights. Kind of easy to see Phoenix maybe, getting tripped up and taking its foot off the gas a little bit tonight.
Bucks and Lakers, they're going to square off with an awfully high total here on this slate, guys. 232.5 on the DraftKings Sportsbook. Los Angeles has hit the over at home pretty often, 17-12 in that category. Chaser fade that we're going to get another over tonight, Garion.
Yeah, they're actually, I believe, top 5 in the NBA in terms of percentage of overs hit. That's what happens when you've got good offensive players and don't play a lot of defense. So I just think that I will take the over here, although it's moved up. This total continues to get higher. But Bucks, up-tempo team, a team that is, sort of quietly struggled with their own defense this season. They have not been great defensively. So I'll go over for a lot of the same reasons why I think we all picked Giannis to just be the number 1 stud on tonight's slate. I just think this is going to be a high-scoring affair.
Nick, over to you.
Yeah, I'll go the same way. I think the Lakers obviously defensively have been a mess. They've found ways to outscore teams in some games recently. And Milwaukee, they remain a team that when everybody is humming, they could put up 130 on just about anybody. But like Gary said, they've quietly slipped on the defensive end. This is not the team that was like a lock to be a top 2 or 3 defense like it felt like they were from 2017 to 2020. That defense has slowly slipped over the last couple of seasons. And I think they're hovering around 10th on the year. But if you look at the last 5 games, the last 10 games, even the last 15 games, this is a bottom half of the league defense in terms of defensive rating. The Bucks play fast. It's a pace-up game for the Lakers. So maybe if this total keeps climbing, at some point I would back off. But as of now, I'm going over.
Jules, a big over. You want it?
Yeah, most likely. Lakers have gone over in 11 of their last 16. They got there on Saturday night against the Knicks, and the Bucks aren't afraid to play with pace. So, yeah, lean to the over in this one. But at some point, it's going to hit a limit where you can't bet it anymore.
All right, very good. Thank you, gentlemen. Now you get to just go do whatever you want. We're going to get to the NHL. That's coming up next here on The Sweat. Halfway home here on The Sweat, and to the ice we go with RotoWire line mates Paul Bruno and AJ Scholes, as well as NHL.com Fantasy on Ice podcast host Pete Jensen. Thank you. Good morning to you, and welcome to the Morning Skate. 7 games on tap tonight, guys, including, of course, Alex Ovechkin's return from COVID protocols. He had to sit out the All-Star game. He's back at it, ready to go for Washington tonight. That's big news. We're going to start with some other high-priced forwards, though. Oilers are going to host the Golden Knights. Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl. They are the most expensive skaters on this slate. Are you looking for a way to roster both, AJ?
I'm not. I don't love Edmonton in this one here. It's just not a great matchup for them going up against the Golden Knights here. So I'd rather save some significant salary. And you can do that even just moving down to the third most expensive guy at center here in Sebastian Aho at 7,500 instead. Look, a quick look at his game log, you might raise some concerns. You see 1 point in his last 4 games. But he's got 8 shots on net in his last 3. So he's clearly trying to get out of this funk, doing everything he can, and a matchup with Ottawa is always a great way to get out of a funk. So I think it's a good spot to use him tonight. Having said that, it might be a better play in general to just pay down at center, given the wings that are available in tonight's slate.
Paul, you also looking to pivot?
I am right with my partner. AJ's right on top of this. Look, Vegas has their top guns back at center, so that's going to mean trouble for the Edmonton big boys, and they haven't been playing very well of late, while Vegas is looking like the cream of the crop in their division. So I'm fading those Edmonton boys tonight. There are many high-end centers, as AJ implied, that are worth taking a pivot away from, though. They got a lot of top matchups there. I'd go for the cheaper guys here who have been producing and have better matchups, quite frankly. I'm going to save some money and go ahead with Kuznetsov at center, given that Ovi's back in the lineup. That $5,700 price tag for a guy who's got 10 points and 33 shots on goal facing Columbus tonight, that's very tasty. And JT Miller versus Arizona, similarly inclined to go that route. $5,200 for a guy who's been one of their leading players in Vancouver for much of the season. He's got 8 points in his last 10, along with 23 shots on goal.
Pete, not going to lie, I like it better when they don't get along. Would you like to make a case for the Edmonton guys?
I'll make a case for Edmonton. I just would rather spend down. It sounds like McDavid might be dealing with a little something on the injury front and continuing to play, so just something to keep an eye on there. I would spend down for Ryan Nugent Hopkins. Since he came back from injury, he's got 7 points in 5 games. He's about a point per game on the season, a little less than that. But even though he's on the third line, he's playing with Zach Hyman. It's a pretty dynamic third line. And Edmonton, since they got Evander Kane, looks a little bit more robust. And I think they might be able to go into Vegas since their top guys have been there for a few days and maybe win that game. So there's a little against the grain play there because Vegas still has not had Jack Eichel at all. Some of their guys have been underwhelming. They're getting Stevenson back, but Martinez is still out. So I think the door is open for Edmonton to maybe pull an upset here. So I would go, my 2 centers are Nugent Hopkins and Kuznetsov because I agree with the Ovi implications of him probably coming back.
All right, well, let's talk about wingers. You can mention Ovechkin if you want to. I would like it. I think he's in a good spot. But wild winger Carrill Kaprasov, he's on a 13-game point streak, 9 goals, a dozen assists, scorching hot, Minnesota and Winnipeg. Is Kaprasov your favorite play at wing, Paul?
Yes, he is. 15 points, 36 shots on goal. No wonder he's at the price of $8,400, but he's been delivering consistently, and he faces a Jets club that's won only 1 of their last 8 games, while Minnie's got 6 in a row in the win column. I also like David Pastrnak and his 16 points. He's the hottest shooter among all wingers tonight, 44 shots on goal, despite the fact that, as the guys mentioned a couple of days ago, he's now playing second-line minutes, but he's still in that potent power play, and that's producing. So they host Pittsburgh tonight, a tough out for sure, priced at $8,500. I think I might consider him. There are cheaper winger options that are compelling, though. Kevin Fiala and Matt Boldy, both of Minnesota, and both firing bullets of late, are priced at $5,900 and $4,300 respectively, and could be part of a good Minnesota stack this evening.
Pastrnak, 14 goals his last 15 games going into the All-Star break. Who is your favorite play at wing, Pete?
I'm going to go off of what Paul was saying with Matt Boldy. I like the idea of tapping into Minnesota. They've been one of the deepest teams in the league. Kaprizov's awesome. Fiala's awesome as well, but you can get Boldy for a lot cheaper than either of those guys. And Boldy brings the exposure to Fiala. Fiala's bounce back in a 12-game point streak of his own is due largely to the Wild calling up Matt Boldy, and he's a point-per-game player so far through 10 games. So if you look at dark horses for the Calder Trophy, just because we still have like the second half of the season to go, maybe if someone could emerge like Jason Robertson last year, you could look at Boldy maybe to be that guy for the Minnesota Wild. So it's kind of a value play, but he's been hot, so we have to mention him. Paul did, and I'm going to piggyback off that.
And AJ, what do you think?
Well, I do think Kaprasov is a solid play tonight. Look, the Jets have been giving up 3.5 goals per game in their last 10 contests, so stacking against them is a great play tonight. I would also consider trying to get Pacioretty and Marchessault in. Pacioretty comes in at 8,200, Marchessault 6,200. But Mike Smith is going to get the start for Edmonton tonight, and he's just returning from a thumb injury. There's got to be some rust there to shake off. And as listeners of our podcast know, I've never been a huge Mike Smith fan to begin with. So I think it's a good opportunity to use both the top guys for the Golden Knights tonight.
Okay, I can't mention the Capitals and not mention Ovechkin. So like I said, he's available again tonight. He's, maybe going to be the high scorer on the slate. But his teammate, John Carlson, just, 2 points his last 3 games. It's not great, but because of that, he's $6,300. He's cheaper than he typically is. So do you like him tonight amongst the defensive options here, Pete?
I like Dmitry Orlov more from the Capitals from a price standpoint. $3,100 in DraftKings. He's been really productive whenever he's been in the lineup. He's had an injury. He's had COVID protocol this season. At a high ceiling. He has 7 multi-point games this season, which is tied for 10th among NHL defensemen. He's got 8 points and strong coverage of shots and blocks. Over his past 12 games, he's got 18 shots and he's got 21 blocks and those 8 points, including 3 goals. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of scoring pop from Washington. It's a team that I'm looking to stack. I got Kuznetsov, I got Dmitry Orlov, and I'm even giving a look to Ilya Samsonov if he gets the start with Vitek Vanacek injured. But I think tonight is a time to jump on Washington. I've been reluctant to do so in my mock lineups this season because they've had so many guys missing. But if you can count on Ovi back and Sammy in the nets, I think they're going to have a nice game tonight.
AJ, who are you poised to go to?
I do like the John Carlson play. There's certainly the matchup there is fantastic. The Jackets just been leaking goals since the start of the year, 4.36 per game in their last 14 contests. And it's a good way to get a share of that Washington #1 power play. But when you talk about power plays in 2022, 2 of the best are going up against each other in Pittsburgh and Boston. Penguins 33.3% in 2022 here. Boston just behind them at 30.2. So I think between the 2 guys at quarterback, their #1 units, save the money and go with Charlie McAvoy. Letang obviously has been producing at huge numbers, but he's so expensive at $7,000. Go down to McAvoy, $5,800. Again, since the start of the year, 15 games for McAvoy. He's got 13 points over that stretch, 7 of which have been scored with the man advantage.
Pablo, you're always, you humor my suggestions at least. Could I interest you in Josh Morrissey tonight?
No, I don't like the way Winnipeg's playing of late, so I'm going to stick with Carlson as the hot play among the top defensemen. You mentioned 3 points in the last few games. He had been pretty much scoreless for a bunch before that, so I think he's getting ready to go on a heater. And what better club to continue that against than the lowly Jackets? I also like Tony DeAngelo. Both he and his opponents tonight are on the second of back-to-back, so you can throw that issue out the window. For his part, he's got 11 points and 22 shots on goal, plus 13 blocks in his last 10. That's why he costs $6,500. And you can bet the Hurricanes are going to be smarting after losing a real good hockey game last night against the Maple Leafs.
Let's talk favorite value tonight. Paul, I'm going to go right back to you because, again, you humor me. Tyler Mott, what do you think?
Nope.
I was hoping to get one. All right, who is it?
You got one more pitch. I look at a couple of value defensemen. I know Pete covered Dmitry Orlov. I'll just add that I like the fact that he mentioned the blocks because that's part of the scoring in DK that that causes me to turn in his direction for only $3,100. You're getting a guy who's right there on the verge of double digits every night in DK play. So that's a great value. And right along with him is Damon Severson. He's been knocked for his defensive play of late a little bit, but he's still scoring a lot of points. And when it comes to Montreal in your schedule, that looks like a points night for all teams in the NHL. So he's a value play for me at $4,400 with 8 points and 24 shots on goal, along with 10 blocks of his own in his last 10 games.
AJ, where are you going?
Well, I'll start with two guys on the Caps that are switching roles a little bit. They're shuffling a few things around at morning skate today, and it starts with Connor Sherry moving up to the first line with Ovechkin. He comes in at 3,100. 2 points in his last 2 games, and just great matchup again for Washington. And so to get him on that group, I think is a solid play. The other one for them, kind of interesting change they're making. They're going to put Lars Eller on the number 1 power play unit. He comes in at 2,800. And look, playing with those guys on the top power play, like, dude should fall into a point here at some point. Similarly, I also like Evan Rodriguez for Pittsburgh tonight at 4,200. It'll be him stepping in for Malkin on the Penguins number 1 unit while Gino's out on the COVID protocols.
Pete, who stands out to you for value?
I'm looking at Connor Brown for the Ottawa Senators. I liked what I saw last night. He's getting top 6 usage. He's getting power play 1 usage. He had a multi-point game in his return from injury, and he's up to 21 points in 27 games on the season. If you've forgotten, wouldn't blame you for forgetting, because Ottawa wasn't a great team last year, but he led the Senators in goals last year in the shortened season with 21. And I just like the opportunity for him. I know it's second of a back-to-back for him and also the Carolina Hurricanes, his opponent. So I'm just looking at him to be a part of a higher scoring game here and keep the momentum going. Just because Drake Batherson is out of the lineup, I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity for Connor Brown to return fantasy value here over the next couple of weeks.
Pete, AJ, Paul, thank you all so much. We'll talk to you again this week, I'm sure, and we'll let you get on with your day as well. Golf on the way to wrap us up here on The Sweat. All right, let's hit the links with our resident golfers and golf experts as well. DraftKings contributors Reed T. Fowler and Jeff Ulrich. Guys, a little bit of PGA Tour high or low with, of course, the Waste Management Phoenix Open on the way. Want to know if these odds are too high, long, or too low, short for this week's tournament. So at plus 1,600, you have Victor Hovland. He has the same odds as 2 guys who were in contention last week in Jordan Spieth and Patrick Cantlay, the 24-year-old. He's been playing some great golf over in the European Tour, but plus 1,600, too high or too low, Reed?
Well, it's the DP World Tour now, Koff. We got to get it right. Pay the price.
Oh, goodness.
Come on now. I think these are Goldilocks. I think these are just right. Because if you take a look at what he's done, like you mentioned, overseas, Koff, if you look at his last, I think 5 events last 5 events, he has 3 worldwide wins, right? Like, yeah, some of them come from limited no-cut fields, but he's playing extremely well right now. And this tournament does feel like one of the top guys are going to win it. We've seen over the last 8 years, both Hideki Matsuyama and Brooks Koepka, who we'll get to in a little bit, have won this event. So it does feel like now with 3 of the top 4 guys coming over in world golf rankings, 6 of the top 10, that one of these guys, this is the premier field that we're getting here in Phoenix. So it does feel like that he doesn't have the greatest stats when it comes into it, but at 1,600, he's the number 3 golfer in the world. So I think they're just right.
Jeff, I should have gone to you first. You wouldn't have corrected me. You also wouldn't have caught that.
No, I would have asked to switch out hosts. What I would have done. I would have demanded it. I would have just left. Look. I mean, this tournament, this field is super interesting. I mean, Patrick Cantlay and Victor Hovland being bigger in the odds on the DraftKings Sportsbook than Hideki Matsuyama this week is pretty interesting. I mean, this is the 3rd and 4th ranked players in the world. And I know Hideki's playing good, but I won't fault anyone for taking Hovland or Cantlay this week. I mean, these are just 2 of the best players in the world right now. And yeah, Victor Hovland, I mean, his best win on the PGA is still the Mayakoba Classic, but I mean, the bigger events will certainly come, and this is one where he could certainly pick it up. So I think you're getting great value. I think if anything, these odds are a little bit too big. I don't know why Hovland isn't getting a little bit more respect coming off a win 2 weeks ago. Reed mentioned the course history stats here. I mean, he's only played here once and missed the cut. It's not really something I worry about a player like Hovland. His rise has been so meteoric over the last year or so that you just can't really factor in course history with a player like this right now. So his odds are too big. I don't know if necessarily that's where I'm going to land in the top. I might even prefer going down to Justin Thomas at plus 1,000. But, I mean, again, I can't fault anyone for taking the odds on Cantlay or Hovland.
Guys, Brooks Koepka is the returning champion here. He's a 2-time winner, but since we haven't seen him since he was cut from the Farmers Insurance Open last month, it's something to be mindful of. He's plus 3,000. Is that too high or too low for Brooks here, Jeff? And also, does he still have the blonde hair?
I mean, I don't follow stuff like that. You have to contact Emerson for the latest, fashion updates on guys like Brooks Koepka. Look, I will scold people for taking Brooks Koepka this week. I get it. This is when we want to take Brooks, when he gets up in the odds and everyone's also off him. And, it's like, Brooks doesn't win these events. And then you get him at plus 3,000 or whatever. It's decent odds, but there's nothing clicking for Brooks right now. He's losing strokes. He's losing multiple strokes off the tee. And we talked about this yesterday, too. And so I'm kind of just doubling down on this. I guess it's my big take of the week. But, when Brooks Koepka's driver isn't working, I mean, what is he? I mean, I mentioned yesterday, he's instead of Superman, he's just man. He doesn't have that mojo. And I think it's a big thing to watch for. If Brooks isn't getting it done off the tee, the rest of his game just doesn't naturally flow. And I don't see him making up for a bad driver in this field. So, no. I don't think these odds are big enough. I think you got to fade Brooks till we see a little bit more.
Reed, how about you?
Oh, I was waiting for the Adam Kaufman, Clark Kent analogy, but I guess it wasn't there.
No. He's just man, like many of us.
I'm gonna say it's too high. I'm with Jeff. Look, this is exactly what happened last year when he was at 5,500 to win. He wasn't coming in great form, and then we get the odds. He has some injury concerns. And then we get him, and he wins. But he was 5 back. Remember, he was 5 back going into Sunday, and he just had an amazing last 12 holes, and Xander and Spieth kind of faltered. So a lot of things got his way. James Hahn also faltered as well. But you take a look at what he did last year coming into it. He was 13 in greens in regulation over the last dozen rounds coming into that tournament. This year, it's not the same. Even though he's got 3 missed cuts, and that kind of feels like it's right where we want Brooks, is missing the cut, and then he wins, and that's what he does. I want Jeff here. This is not the case. I think it's too high for him.
Fellas, I don't care if we get to our last couple questions because this is the one I've been waiting all show to ask. At plus 3,500, we have both Tony Finau and Louis Oosthuizen. We know these are your guys, so let's mix it up a little bit here. Make your case, and Reed, you can go first, for why your favorite golfer is a better bet at plus 3,500 than the other guy's favorite golfer. Go ahead.
Look, the only reason where Louis Oosthuizen is better than Tony Finau is in that just right there. You saw it. That's the only way, is that his name is above Tony in the odds, just by name, not by value. Let's just take a look at how they finished their best finish here at this tournament. Louis got a respectable third place, right? You know, maybe in like 2001. Finau's come runner-up. And let's take a look at Louis Oosthuizen's last event, Jeff. It was the RSM Classic in like November where he withdrew. I mean, Finau's last is a T28 like last week in a strong field. And look, he's not been the greatest, but come on, there's no way you're taking Louis. He's probably not even sleeping right. His back's probably so sore, his neck's sore. He's probably going to WD again on Saturday.
Jeff, do you think that was just alphabetical order by first name or what?
I mean, like, it doesn't matter. I mean, we don't care where we have Louis Oosthuizen on the board. We're going to bet him this week. Of course, we're going to bet him over Tony, can't make the cut Finau at the Farmers, where everyone backed him. And he ruined my lineups too, Reed. I haven't even bugged you about that yet, now that we're bringing it up.
Same.
Anyways, look, yeah, Louis rested. You know what? This is an event where we have seen players come in. Brooks did it last year, no form, came in. Brooks Koepka did this in 2015 too. Came in, hadn't played, won the event. Louis well rested. He's sitting back. All these guys are weary from beating each other up. Yeah, Louis landed a third place the first time he played the Waste Management Phoenix Open. That was in 2017, by the way, Reed. T11 last year. He likes these desert layouts. I'm actually pretty bullish on him, to be honest, this week. I think he's going to surprise people, and I think he will get in contention very early in the PGA season and pick up his second PGA win of his career. Yes, of course you bet Louis over Tony Finau. You bet him over Brooks Koepka at this range. You bet him over Russell Henley at this range. You bet him over everyone at this range. Still too big, a plus 3,500.
Where do you go from here? Home. That's it. That's a show. Thanks to those guys, Reed, Jeff, everybody else, including Jules, who still just loves the show so much. He's sitting right by my side. He is. He's right there. Good to see you. All right. Yeah. Okay. Jaguars, Eagles, a Madden simulation coming up on the DraftKings YouTube and Twitch pages. Go nowhere. And, of course, the slate, 5 o'clock Eastern time after the 4 o'clock Madden sim on the YouTube, Twitch pages as well. You will have Brendan Glasheen, Chirag Hira, Matt Milesman talking a lot of NBA in the wake of that big trade between the Blazers and